So we've looked at short and rhythmic lead sounds. Now let's go to the other extreme of long and modulated lead sounds. So these could be in tracks like Pendulum Slam or Omen by The Prodigy, where the note of the synthesizer is played for quite a long time, which means that the actual timbre is exposed for a long time, and therefore you need something in there to change, which is the modulation, over that period of time to keep the listener engaged in the sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to play with a bit more in-depth filtering. We're going to look at using macros a lot more extensively and look at various other ways that we can add a lot more interest to the tonality of a synthesizer when you want to play them for a longer period of time. Right, so first let's play this through and give you an idea of what we're aiming for here. The key thing is there's lots of, as you can see, lots of modulation assignments going on with the sound, and there's two key different states that we're assigning to a single macro here, and that's what we're going to aim for at the end of this lead design. So halfway through I'll shift this macro from its extreme left position to its right to demonstrate the full different tones, and you get an idea of what we're aiming towards. So there's numerous ways you can go about creating your kind of core timbre, and this will come mostly with massive from the oscillator stage, but we're going to explore adding some insert effects as well, just to see how they react to the shaping and the layering of the oscillators too. So obviously I've got a very plain kind of sawtooth playing at the moment, and the first place to kind of look in terms of how this will be shaped is envelope 4, which is our amplitude envelope. And when we've done a new sound rather than sort of using the default opening sound when you first create an instance of a massive plugin, you'll get quite a square shaped amplitude envelope anyway. So this is quite good. It means the volume's going to be immediate when the note's pressed, and it's just going to stay consistent in volume until you take your finger off the note, and then you'll get a very quick fade out to silence when the release stage kicks in. So that's fine for now. Nothing more I want to work with. In terms of the notes, I've already obviously created a melody line that I'm happy with, and it's the one that I've used for creating the demo example I just played. But it's not always the case. It can be that you just sit here hitting pads while you're playing around with the sound design, and then you figure out the best kind of octave register to play the sound in, and then slowly progress a melody idea. There's no kind of fixed way that you can go about doing this, but in this case I've already got at least a starting melody down. Yeah, back to the timbre of the oscillator. So we looked at layering stuff up by enabling oscillators already and turning them up and down in volume. We've got the options of the actual wavetable, which is loaded for each oscillator, and then you've got the side of the wavetable, because one will be one waveform, the other waveform will be the other side, and this is kind of just like the morph between the two extremes of what those two waveforms are. We're going to actually experiment now with the bend and the formant options here. So if I just press play, spectrum mode is just kind of like a filter, like a low pass. Useful if you don't want to eat up your filters for basic tasks like low pass filtering. You can shape the tone of the oscillators using the intensity control. But if you switch it to one of the bend settings, what it will actually do is distort the waveform on the positive and the negative cycle. And as you can see here, it kind of changes the shape to either one extreme end or to the other. So if I put this in the middle position where it's not bending to the left or the right hand side of the waveform, and then I start sweeping it, you'll hear how much it will change. Not quite with this, but let's go for a bit more of an extreme oscillator choice. So I'm just going to flick through a few of these, tweak the bend position until I find a tone that I find interesting alongside the drums and the bass that I've already created for my song. like that little sweet spot there between, let's say, 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So it's nice when it moves, not so nice when it's static. It's more creates sort of life to the sound when it's moving. So this is where we can use the envelope, as we did with the earlier example with the short percussive sounds. We did it for the filter movement. In this case, I can just do it for the oscillator movement. So let's just turn that up and see what that sounds like. Again, I'm going to go for at least initially a very percussive movement, quickly up with a fast attack, and then a very fast decay, which can go down to its lowest value as long as the sustain's fully down as well. So let's see how that sounds. Here there's a slight bit of movement there, but it may not be enough. The other option is I can keep looking through the oscillators to see if there's something a bit more interesting to tickle my ear, or can move on to the other option, which is formant. And this basically is changing the tonality of pitch rather than the entire pitch of the oscillator itself, and it will create vowel-esque kind of sounds. So if I put formant on, it's much more extreme, obviously. Drag it the other way to change the polarity of the assignment. That's quite nice. It's a bit up in the high register and high and piercing, so let's pull it down an octave, 12 semitones, to see if that's better. Maybe make it less extreme, less of a sweep. I'll give this a go an octave lower. It's a bit low as an overall tone, but that could work as a nice little moving lower tone, and then I'll layer in some other bits above, and let's see what we can get going on there. So remember, we've got the wavetable position, which can sweep between that and that setting, and then we have the sort of the really twisty ways of changing these oscillators. So let's see what we can do. So I quite like how these are working off each other now. There's a bit of phase cancellation happening between the two waveforms. They're kind of creating little divots and peaks in the frequency response to the sound, which is creating a bit of interest. So I'm just going to see if I can enhance that by detuning this oscillator slightly from this one, just to create a bit more of a separation between the two so they fight off each other a bit more violently. Okay, that's interesting. It's okay for now. So in terms of the distortion option, so we've got to turn the insert effect on and then choose where we want this to be under routing. So at the moment it's defaulted insert 1. You just click on these blocks to patch where you want these inserts to be. There's 2. I want it to be, at least now, it doesn't matter at this stage because there's no filter, but it could be before or after the filter. And let's just add a bit of distortion. So there's 3 key distortion types, and I still just treat them as a suck it and see thing. Just add it to whatever sound I've got going on right now and see which one seems to add something interesting to the sound. So again, we've got dry wet, so no effect, full effect, and anywhere in between is parallel distortion. interesting. And now to try hard clipper. It's definitely thickening up the sound by the harmonics and clipping that it's adding. Can you hear the rhythm there? There's a do-wah-wah, 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 as these are actually kind of interacting with each other. I'm just trying to see the key thing that's affecting that. There you can hear it. Do-wah-wah, do-wah-wah. That's quite nice. Without. It's quite nice. It sounds quite different from the demo example I gave before, but that's fine. I can look at adding another oscillator, but I'll leave that to a little bit later when we look at doing this state changing I mentioned before, where we can have two different major timbres within one instance of massive. So we'll leave that for now. So our very core tones for our first state of this lead are now in place. It's time to start looking at ways of just embellishing a little bit on this and then slowly working towards how we can create our second state as well.